Yak Gotti never took the stand during the whole trial.
He didn't need
something
to.
that was established? Well, I mean, you don't need to, but some people still take the stand because they feel they're innocent.
Well, he was certainly innocent and felt he was innocent, but there was still no need. I don't mean to argue with you. He still felt no. I don't want to make it seem like he should have taken the stand, but he didn't. We're not required to take the stand, and frankly, the state didn't put up a case where I needed to put anyone on the stand. Their case was shit.
Well, a few people took the stand, and you cross-examined them. One of them was Lil D. And I guess he actually admitted there was a false accusation against Yak Gotti.
He admitted to having lied on Yak Gotti when he'd been interviewed by the police. And I believe, and forgive me because it was a long trial and I may get some of this mixed up, but I believe he's the one that said, when I confronted him and basically scolded him, I intended to be more harsh, but someone said I came across as a disappointed dad. He said, Yak never showed me anything but love. So a lot of these, you have to understand how terrible Rice Street is to fully appreciate why folks would lie and tell detectives and investigators what they think they want to hear in order to avoid Rice Street. And that's what happened with a lot of these guys, which, of course, I'm not the one that was locked up for 2.5 years like Diamante. So it's easier for me to forgive, I think. But I get why they did what they did 10 years ago, and I don't hold it against them. All that I care about is that they got on the stand and told the truth.
Well, the star witness in this case for the prosecution was Lil Woody. And Lil Woody had a lot of evidence in interrogation rooms where he's putting the murder on Young Thug, he's implicating a lot of different people and so forth. So when Lil Woody took the stand, you actually cross-examined him.
I did.
What was your experience cross-examining Woody?
You know, this, so I spent a lot of, I feel like I know him really well because I don't know how many scores of hours, I mean, I don't know, 50 hours? I watched his interrogation interviews over and over and over again. I knew everything about them. He had 5 or 6 interviews with the police back in 2015. And so I had a very long cross-examination prepared for him. But when he got up on the stand and he didn't say what he told the police, instead he told the truth, which is I lied to the police, I finessed the police. Basically, I would say anything to not put on that blue uniform of Rice Street. And then I had Max Short do a cross before I did my cross. Anyway, I threw out my entire cross-examination that I had prepared meticulously of Lil Woody. And instead, what happened was I saw him in some YouTube video where he was talking about finding God and how that changed his life. So my approach was, how do I explain to the jury that, yeah, maybe Woody was lying then in 2015, but he's telling the truth now. How do I explain that? And so I did an unusual cross in that I asked him a lot of open-ended questions and I let him just talk, which you're not supposed to do on cross. And I gave Woody the opportunity to talk about finding God, testifying truthfully now, partially because of that, lying before and finessing the police. I let him explain himself. And that's how I handled him. But I also treated him, I think, humanely, which the prosecution didn't treat him humanely. He says that himself. So that's my cross of Lil Woody.
Well, right, because at one point he was deemed a hostile witness.
True.
Explain what that is in legal terms.
You know, you're not allowed to ask leading questions of your own witnesses. So he was the state's witness, but he was being very uncooperative with the state. So simply put, if your own witness is being uncooperative with you, you can ask the court for permission to treat them as a hostile witness and then ask them leading questions. So it was the opportunity for the prosecution to ask him leading questions. It wasn't that he was hostile like he was physically violent with them, but hostile in that he wasn't cooperative.
Do you think if Woody, instead of doing what he did, got on the stand and repeated all the things that he said in the interrogation rooms and basically said, yes, Young Thug hired me to kill Nut. Yes, YSL is a gang, and here's all these other activities that I was involved with and so forth. Do you think that the outcome would have been different?
First of all, I'm going to clarify something, and that is, while I'm not Jeffrey Williams' attorney, all of us got very close in there. I don't believe in any of those zillions of hours of interrogation video I watched. That was he so specific about Young Thug ordered me to kill Peanut. But he did say Young Thug was involved. Would the outcome have been different? I don't think so, only because our cross-examination would have been different, and we would have continued to show the inconsistencies in what he told the police in 2015. Because as much of a great liar as Woody was back then, as much of a finesser, and he was a pro, he didn't get everything right. His stories were wildly inconsistent over those half a dozen police interviews. He doesn't even bring up Young Thug and the people that he alleged back then murdered Peanut until his very last interview. So I don't think the outcome would have been any different. I'm just glad he got up there and told the truth and not those lies.
Well, do you think by that time, and every day this was becoming Georgia's longest running criminal trial ever?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Ultimately, it was what, 2.5 years?
2.5. Well, the trial itself was 2 years.
2 years.
They were locked up 2.5.
Did you personally see the jury start to turn against the prosecution just out of the frustration, out of the whole thing?
Well, here's what I saw as time went on, which is that they would begin to tune out when the state went on and on and on with some of their witnesses. They weren't expressing exasperation. They didn't look frustrated, but they would just, I was watching the jury pretty much the whole time. I had a pretty good front row seat for most of the trial, and they would just tune out after a time. And then you'd get someone like Keith Adams, who I think was by far the best at cross-examination of anyone. There were a lot of great defense attorneys from cross-exam, but Keith Adams would get up and they would just be riveted. It was like they'd sit up straight in their seat, they would look right at Keith, and then they'd focus again. I tried to keep my cross-examinations pretty short so that they would stay focused when I did my cross-exam. But I think the point where they turned against the prosecution is where a juror got up in early November, maybe, and said, look, enough of this. Enough of this. I'm biased against the prosecution by this point. And I need to go back to work. I miss my job. They dragged this out. He didn't say this, but they dragged this out for too long. And of course, the prosecution wasn't happy, but the judge said, look, these people were all vetted. They were all unbiased when the case started. I am so sorry if by your actions, they've now become biased against you. That's the right answer, by the way.